During a high school class project, my teacher told me it's unrealistic being a CEO. It's been my dream to be a CEO since I was 10. So I told her, it is realistic. Follow me on my journey to learn what it takes to become a CEO. Hi guys, another episode of Realistic CEO. I'm here with Dan Moriarty. So, hey, introduce yourself.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for having me on your podcast this morning. I'm Dan Moriarty, CEO and president of Monson Savings Bank. Been with the bank for 26 years now, and just happy to be here to answer some questions for you.
Thank you. I'm happy to have you here as well. So, the first question I want to ask you is, what made you get into this type of business?
Well, it started a long time ago, and it's a funny story I've shared with other people. But when I was in high school, I was working a lot of labor jobs, and I was working in the Monson Highway Department. And we were out in 95, 100-degree weather, cuffing stone and building roads. And I knew at that point all I wanted to do was work in air conditioning and maybe wear a nice shirt and a tie. We don't wear ties that much anymore, but that was my first inspiration. And ironically, I have a friend of mine and a professional colleague, Michael Ruette, who was working at Monson Savings Bank at the time when we were in high school. And when I was driving and riding around in the dump trucks and sweating, Michael Ruette would be in his little shirt and tie going to the air-conditioned bank. So I always said to the highway department guys, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to learn a skill and work in the professional world. So that's kind of how I entered the idea of working in a professional career. And it just happened to be in banking. So that was kind of like the initial inspiration for me to work in a professional environment.
So speaking on getting into banking, how did you say it was like to be able to climb throughout the business? Like, how was that experience?
Yeah, sure. So when I was in high school, I was always good with numbers and math, and I wanted to make sure that I could do something with that kind of skill set. So I went into accounting. So I went to Providence College back in the late 80s, early 90s, and studied accounting because I wanted to, maybe similar to what your ideas are, tried to become your own entrepreneur or business owner. I figured that was the best discipline to go into. So accounting is kind of like the specialized top level business degree you can get. And then I figured if I was going to go into my own business or run a business, accounting was the field I wanted to go into. So I studied accounting at Providence College for 4 years. And when I got out, I worked in what they call the public accounting field. So basically, I would work on a lot of different companies. I would audit their financial statements. We would look at their operations. So that got me interested in the business world from a professional level. But I did actually work on some small community banks, back when I was in my early 20s. And that gave me a little bit of an attraction toward working with people, working with small communities, and just getting involved and trying to help people. So that's kind of how I had the mindset of working in banking. But it was a little bit of a crooked path, if you will. So I worked for a big CPA firm in Hartford, Connecticut. Then I worked for companies like Aetna, Health South, Mass Mutual, Unicare Life Insurance Company. So I had a lot of big business experience, but I felt like I could maybe help a smaller company, and that's how I landed a job at Monson Savings Bank back in 1998.
If you were to say, like, knowing what you know now, how would you change your path to make it a little bit more smooth?
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20, right? But I think what I would encourage young people getting into the business is to talk to people, right? Try to get your people skills down. Try to ask questions. There's no dumb question. I remember first starting off in my professional career, I was always afraid to ask a question because I didn't want people to think I didn't know the subject matter or what I needed to know. So that's one thing. I would always say, hey, ask questions. If you don't know something, or if you come across some interesting people, ask a lot of questions. And what I've learned is that the majority of my mentors that I've had over my career, they're more than happy to share their stories. So that would be one. I'd encourage people to read more. I was not a big reader. I read my textbooks in college, but I wasn't somebody that read a lot of books recreationally. So I think reading is a big attribute or contributor to somebody's success from an intelligence level. And then just being able to be able to live with yourself when you make mistakes, right? That's the best teacher. When we make mistakes, we learn from that. So I would just encourage, yeah, I would encourage young people to ask questions, really develop relationships with people, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Most of the people that have been very successful, if you ask them, I'm sure they made their share of mistakes.
What would be your top three books for someone to read that would like help them get, a little bit more into the business world to learn like some tactics that might help them grow their own business?
Okay, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm a faith-based guy, so I say the Bible's first, right? And I believe Jesus was a great leader. So you can, if you're into the spiritual world and your faith, that's going to give you a lot of direction. But other books, oh boy, that's a great question. This should be an easy question because I haven't read a lot of books start to finish. But I like to read. I'm going to give more of a, instead of a specific title, I'm going to give you some topics that I like. So I like to read books about leadership. I like to read a lot of content on how to manage people. And then the third topic would be how to solve problems. So if you can find any books in those categories, I think that it can really help individuals be a better person and a better leader.
Why would you pick those three topics out of any topic?
Well, in my role, so I deal with a lot of those topics, right? So I deal with people. That's either my people that I work with in the organization. We deal with problems every day, but we're also trying to find solutions for people. So it's not always easy to lead people, right? So I always try to say, I'll do anything first. I'll do anything that needs to be done for the organization. I'll pick up a vacuum cleaner. I'll sweep the sidewalk. So you have to really be humble. So those topics can really make a CEO or a business owner well-rounded. But every leader is different, and sometimes you have to try different techniques to inspire people to do things that you want or to try to achieve a goal. So again, if you can, you got to find some kind of topic or some kind of author that can kind of explain that to you in terms that you can understand. So it doesn't need to be a novel either. It can be these short stories or short articles on strategies, and that can help.
Speaking on leadership, how would you say it would be like good for like a young person like me to develop a leadership skill set?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether in your high school or you're working at a job, you want to just step up, right? You want to just try to be that example. I always try to use that. So I played a lot of sports when I was younger, and I always tried to do the best I could for my teammates, right? So if you can become a leader or a captain on the field or on the basketball court or baseball field, that really helped me out as I look back at my career. Because, and I use sports as an analogy, you can learn a lot about life, right? Rules to the game, right? So you got to follow the rules. You have referees or umpires that kind of will overlook you and see how you play. But the players around you will always try to look up to you for guidance, support, correction, encouragement. So I think a lot of my past experiences, just as being younger, and sometimes you're not very comfortable like trying to be the leader, right? You might be a quiet leader, so you're going to find that there are leaders that are very loud or just boisterous in it. But there's also leaders that can lead just by example, by quiet, reserved thought, having empathy with their employees. So there's a lot of different leaders, but I think the best advice I can give to young people is, get outside your comfort zone. If a position comes up, or a teacher, or if you're in an organization that's saying, hey, I got a project, take the lead on it, right? And then what you want to try to do is inspire people around you to help you achieve the goal or finish the project.
Okay, so you were speaking about communicating with other people, like and asking questions. So speaking about that, how would you say networking helps you in a role like what you're in right now?
Yeah, so it's very important, obviously, in my position, to be out there networking with the community and people in business, right? Um, but people who know me, I'm more of a quiet, reserved person. I like to listen to stories if somebody wants to talk, but I just ask a couple questions, get them to open up to me, and feel generally, or really be attentive to what they're talking about, right? So if they're telling me about their business, I want to understand everything that they do and why they're passionate about it. Um, but for my business, I just want to let people know what we have for services or products that might help them. I'm not a hard sell type of individual. I just try to educate when I'm talking to people. So networking's extremely important. Um, and I think when I was younger, um, going to a lot of family events and just talking with my older cousins or aunts or uncles or grandparents, that was kind of the start of that. But I always like to have my people when we go out to events. I always say, hey, go meet three people we haven't met before, right?
Mhm.
So even if you're uncomfortable, you just got to go up to somebody and say, hello, my name is, and then just start the conversation. So networking is very important. But relationships after that networking is even more important because you'll find with most CEOs or most companies, referrals from those relationships mean a lot. And people want to do business with who they like, but more importantly, they want to do business with who they trust. So that networking is
Okay,
very
why
important.
would you say people will do business with people they like, but more with people that they trust?
Yeah, because you know, in the business world, there are a lot of people doing business, and there are a lot of likable people. But if you don't trust the individual, you don't trust the company, or you don't trust the product behind that individual, there really isn't a lot of weight that you can put on that individual. I may like you,
Hmm.
um, but if there's a little bit of lack of trust, I may choose somebody else to do that. So I think honesty um, and being trustworthy is very important.
In the business world, as like a, would you say like would that be like only for business or like with others, or would you say in within your company as well?
I would say it's equally important because with any company, if you're asking individuals to do something, they want to trust you that what you're telling them is accurate. Um, if they do certain things, then maybe they can achieve another role, or so I believe that somebody's trustworthiness is extremely important for the individuals they work for or they're managing or leading, um, but also in the external world because what we're trying to do is train the people within your organization to be like yourself, right? You want them to be honest, you want them to be trustworthy so they can go out and sell your product or they can provide the service. And you'll find, I found that the individuals that are most trustworthy and the organizations that stand behind their product are the ones that do very well.
Okay, so speaking about individuals in your organization, how do you find people that are like-minded to you to help you?
Yeah, so it's almost a double-edged sword, right? So we want to try to find people that are like-minded like you,
Hmm.
but you also want to be have an organization that has a lot of diversity
Hmm.
because of that creates a lot of value. So you gotta try to find people that are like you, but you also got to find people that may not be like you but have the same values. So the value structure of somebody or the values that the company has, you try to find individuals that have that. Um, I always like to have multiple people interview people we're trying to recruit in because there's different perspectives. So I may see something in you um, that somebody may not see, but they may see another skill set that you have that I didn't recognize. Um, so again, I think you have to tell your story. You have to tell your story about the product that you're offering to try to find the right people to work for your organization. And fortunately, we've been very lucky here at Monson Savings Bank to find like-minded people.
Okay, so you talked about how you have multiple people interview individuals. Why would you say building a team is like that important? So important, you got to have multiple people just so you make sure that you find the right person.
Yeah, right. So you've heard the old saying, like the weakest, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So if you bring an individual in that doesn't fit the culture or the mindset, that person sometimes has more influence than the other, you know, multiple people that you have on your team. And that can cause a problem in your organization. It can cause problems with morale. It can cause problems with recruiting new people in or even keeping people in your organization to stay a long time. So usually in our organization, usually if somebody comes in that doesn't have the same mindset or values that we have, they tend to stick out because there's so many good people around them that are working hard for the goal and they're working as a team. Somebody that doesn't want to work in that environment or be a team player will quickly be isolated or have a spotlight on them. And unfortunately, you have to do something about that.
So I see you say yes, you play sports. So it's like, would you say that's similar to like having a bad teammate that kind of like ruins like the energy of your team, like with like a bad employee that you work with?
That's exactly right. So think about a sports team where maybe somebody either doesn't train hard, doesn't practice, so their skill sets don't get better, or if they're on the field and they just want it's all about them, right? They want to be the superstar and they hog the ball all the time. They don't pass the ball. They criticize other people when they don't get their way or they don't have a good game or something like that. So it's yeah, I would agree with you 100% that a team player that doesn't want to put in the effort or the or sacrifice to help somebody else next to them on the field or in the office sticks out like a sore thumb, and it creates a bad sense of morale within the other team members. And as a leader, if somebody's doing that, then you have to take charge and recognize that and correct that situation.
So on a situation like that, how do you normally deal with it to make sure that it doesn't like escalate to something way higher, like way worse than it needs to be?
Yeah, so you have to identify it quickly, and sometimes it's not easy to identify, but sometimes you'll hear it from your other players or your other colleagues that say, "Hey, this is not really working out that well." So what you have to do is just address the issue, which can be sometimes difficult. Nobody likes to hear they're not doing something well or not doing a great job. But what we try to do is try to give that person every opportunity to be better. Try to give them, maybe there's more training they need, or sometimes it's just saying, hey, I don't know if you notice what you're doing or how your actions or words are affecting other people or customers. But this is what we would like you to do. These are the values. And you always go back to the values of the organization and the goals that we're trying to achieve. And that sometimes can remedy the situation. But the best advice would be address that situation earlier on in the process, because like you said, if it festers or it starts to grow, it can be a monster to try to get back in the box.
Okay, so let's say you don't contain it early. Like, how would you be able to help keep your employees on the same page with each other, even though they might not be able to like have 100% energy every day, all day?
Yeah. So every player has a different personality, right? Or every colleague has a different personality. So like I'll try to address that individual one-on-one, and then I might bring in maybe the other team members that are being affected by it, and try to talk it out. You know, I believe people are good at heart, so there's not a lot of intention to be a bad teammate or a bad colleague, but sometimes we're kind of blinded to how our actions or words are perceived. So it's all about perception. So I just try to bring that to light, and even if it gets to a difficult situation, we try to talk it out, and then we'll set parameters or goals to try to adjust the way the perception is happening. So it's not always easy, and every situation is different. But you want to try to attack the issue early before it gets too far down the road. But I always give the opportunity to someone to improve their skill sets, improve their production, improve their way of dealing with things in your business.
Speaking on difficult situations, how do you deal with a difficult situation with, say, that maybe a sale doesn't go your way, or like you might lose a client? How would that help you, or like not help you, but how do you
address
overcome,
that,
yeah,
or overcome that? Yeah. So, and you're not going to overcome every issue or every situation. You never want to lose a customer. But first you want to get the customer's perspective on what they're feeling or what they experienced, and then reflect on that. So I usually like to have the customer come in and talk to me directly. Sometimes it's hard, reading tone in a text or getting a phone call. And usually if we sit down and talk it out, most of the times we can correct the problem. but you have to address it, right? I always say, take the headache once. Don't ignore it. Don't give that person attention, right? It could be a valid excuse or a valid problem they're having, but you want to hear their perspective. And then you want to talk to your people on the other side of the organization and say, okay, what did we do? Did we drop the ball on this one? And then, so we try to address that specific issue with that customer, and hopefully we can salvage the relationship. But if we don't, and we can't salvage the situation, I want to know what we're going to put in place to prevent it from happening again, right? So you try to put controls in place, or policies or procedures to help avoid that type of situation. But again, going back to the communication piece, I hope and I expect all of my colleagues in the organization to over communicate with their teammates, but also with the customer, because you never want to assume something, or you never want to assume the customer understands what they're buying or what they're investing in, or what they're transacting in. So you want to over communication is a good strategy to use.
Okay, you speak a lot about communication. Why is that so important to you?
I think because you're dealing with people hear things differently than possibly what we're saying to them, or they don't comprehend what we're trying to say to them, or maybe we just assume that we're explaining to them crystal clear what we're trying to explain, and they don't understand. So it's like I relate to like a small child, or if parents out there that have children. Sometimes you have to explain it a few different ways or a few different times to make sure they understand, because people are so busy. They have so many things going on. So you may say something, I could say something once to you, and I walk away and I assume you understand exactly what I want you to do, steps 1, 2, and 3, but maybe you only heard step number 2, and then you don't even know why you're doing it. So for organizations that have employees, I always explain why you're asking them to do something, so they understand the end goal of it. But it doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult, because our minds are racing around. We have so many things that are going on. Communication is really critical to make sure both parties understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Since you talk about family, how would you be able to balance work with having also a relationship with your family?
Yeah, so that's the age-old question, right? People are trying to find balance of life. You have to work hard to provide for your family, but you don't want to shortchange your family. So again, it's a learning process. I don't have all the answers to give to somebody, but I think you can use the same techniques at home. Communication, asking questions, listening when a family member is talking to you, just like you would if you're in the business world and you're listening to a customer. But it's very hard, right? So sometimes there's only 24 hours in the day, and sometimes as a CEO or an entrepreneur or business owner, you put endless hours in the organization to provide for your family. But sometimes you may sway too much time to the business, and you maybe don't spend enough time with your family. So that it's a fine balance. So communication is key, which I'm always working on. That's a never-ending thing, right? Sometimes I think I say something to my family saying we have this event coming up, but I don't, but I think I did. So, write things down, put it on the calendar. Same with the workforce. Like, okay, we got some meetings coming up. Let's make sure everybody knows what they're going to be doing. But sometimes it's very challenging to find that work-life balance. But you gotta just, one thing I will mention is try not to be selfish, right? So if you think of others first, then you can sometimes find that balance, right? Because there's so much time in the day that I may have a lot of things to do and I got to get them done, but there's other officers in the bank that I need to spend time with to make sure that we're achieving the goal. So if I put others first and my needs or wants second, then that usually helps me balance both work and home life.
So speaking on balance, has there ever been a time where you've kind of realized that you might be working a little too much and not spending enough time with your family?
Oh yeah, you usually get some indicators, or you get some commentary from the home life saying, hey, I really think you're spending too much time. So again, if you have a good relationship at home, at work, usually you get the communication early that, hey, you're spending either too much time on this and not enough on that. Hey, what about me? That sort of thing. So you got to be a good listener. So sometimes people will say things or they'll drop clues to you, and if you're not paying attention or listening, you're going to miss the subtle clues of what you're doing or not doing. So
For my last question, I kind of want to steer away from the business side and just more of what's a fun fact about you that nobody really knows about?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Fun fact. Fun fact. And maybe some people don't know. A lot of people know I like to still work out. And gosh, I've done a lot of marathons. I've done Ironmans. But I think maybe working out too much doesn't help my golf game. So I think if I want to try to be better at one thing this year, I want to improve my golf game. And when you play other sports where the ball is moving, when you play a sport where the ball's not moving, but it's harder than any other sport you played, that kind of inspires me to try to be better. And every year at this time of year, I say, hey, I can be better at this game. So I'm going to challenge myself this year to at least be a better than average golfer.
So for my last final question, what advice would you give to me to be a realistic CEO?
That's a great question. All right. So my best advice to you to be a realistic CEO is to not be so hard on yourself. Again, if and when you make mistakes, you're never going to find your true potential until you've kind of made a couple steps forward, but then you may have to take a couple steps back because you made a wrong decision on something. So the best advice I can tell you is to be humble and never think you know everything about something, and never think the way that you do things is always the right way. So if you have people around you that have ideas, you want to listen to them, and try to maximize the potential of everybody around you with their ideas. Because I think diversity of thought and experiences can add value to the product or service you're offering.
Okay. Thank you for this interview. This was great.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys for watching Realistic CEO episode 2. Bye.